Arab executive hires African woman to care for his daughter with Down syndrome, but hidden cameras reveal this. She was quiet, modest, and almost invisible as she stepped through the towering glass doors of his mansion in Dubai. A single mother from Kenya, Amal had come to work as a live-in caregiver for the billionaire's daughter, Lena, a 9-year-old girl with Down syndrome who hadn't spoken in nearly a year. The job was simple, the pay generous. What the Arab executive, Karim Al-Fahd, didn't expect was that this humble woman would ignite a transformation so profound, even his 24-hour surveillance cameras couldn't fully capture the depth of what happened inside those walls. At first, Karim just wanted someone who could manage Lena's basic needs. He was a man consumed by work, by prestige, by maintaining an empire built on silence and structure. But behind closed doors, his home was anything but peaceful. Lena barely made eye contact. Nannies had come and gone, none lasting more than 2 weeks. But Amal was different. She didn't try to control Lena, she listened. She didn't talk over her. She waited. One night, Karim, reviewing footage from his home security system, sat back stunned. What he saw shook him to his core. Amal wasn't just caring for Lena, she was teaching her to feel again. There, in grainy, grayscale footage, was his daughter laughing. And then, just hours later, a word. Her first word in over 11 months. And it wasn't Daddy. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. Stories like this deserve to be heard, and we bring them to life because of your support. Stick with us as we unravel this deeply emotional story of loss, resilience, and a bond that neither blood nor status could ever predict. From the outside, the Al-Fahd estate looked like something from a dream. White stone walls glowing under the Dubai sun, fountains dancing in the breeze, and guards in suits patrolling like shadows. But inside, the silence was unbearable. Karim Al-Fahd, one of the most powerful men in the Emirates, had built his kingdom on discipline, logic, and flawless control. Yet in the heart of his mansion sat his greatest failure, his daughter Lena, motionless and wordless in her custom-built therapy room. Lena had Down syndrome, and since the death of her mother 2 years ago, she had retreated into herself. No laughter, no eye contact, not even a whisper. Karim, despite his unimaginable wealth, could not buy his way into her world. He had hired specialists from Europe, therapists from the United States, even flown in spiritual healers. Nothing worked. Every caregiver left defeated, sometimes in tears, until Amal arrived. She was not what Karim expected. Slim, soft-spoken, and dressed in a modest navy dress, she barely reached his chest in height. She wore no makeup, carried only a small duffel bag, and had eyes that looked like they'd seen far more than her 33 years. She spoke with a calm Kenyan accent, her voice low but clear. Karim almost dismissed her on the spot. But Lena reacted. The girl who wouldn't lift her head raised her eyes to look at Amal as she entered the room. It lasted less than a second, but it was more than Karim had seen in months. That look, barely a glance, was enough. He hired her the same day. No interviews, no paperwork, just a quiet nod and the words, "You start tomorrow." Amal didn't ask about the other caregivers. She didn't ask why the house felt so cold, even in the middle of summer. She simply entered Lena's space and sat. No toys, no instructions, no pressure, just her presence. Karim watched from his study through the silent feed of a hidden camera. She would sit on the floor, hands folded, eyes closed, as if in prayer, for hours. At first, Karim thought it was useless. "This woman's wasting my time," he muttered into his glass of scotch one evening. But Lena didn't scream. She didn't hide. She didn't break things. And slowly, over days, something began to change. On day 5, Amal placed a small, worn, stuffed giraffe beside Lena on the carpet and whispered something in Swahili. The girl blinked. On day 6, Lena reached out, tentatively, carefully, and touched Amal's sleeve. By the end of week 1, the child had scooted herself closer, inch by inch, just to sit beside her. Karim pretended not to care. He stayed in his office, buried himself in business calls, but every night he reviewed the footage. One evening, he paused the video, leaning in. Amal was brushing Lena's hair, her fingers gentle, patient. She sang a soft song Karim didn't recognize. Lena's eyes were closed, and then her lips moved, just a little. No sound, but they moved. "Replay that," Karim whispered to himself. And he did. Again and again. His hands trembled. The next morning, he called Amal to his office. She entered quietly, hands behind her back, her dress neatly pressed despite having slept in the servants' quarters. He didn't offer her a seat. "What are you doing to her?" he asked. Amal blinked slowly. "I'm seeing her." "You mean watching her?" "No," she said simply. "I mean, I'm seeing her for who she is." Karim didn't reply. He didn't know how to. No one had ever spoken to him that way. Not in this house. After she left the room, Karim stood for several long minutes in front of the massive floor-to-ceiling window, watching the desert stretch endlessly beyond the estate. For the first time in years, he felt something crack inside his perfectly polished world. And that was just the beginning. Karim Al-Fad had not always been a distant man. Years ago, before boardrooms replaced bedrooms and the click of deals overpowered the laughter of family dinners, Karim had been someone else. Someone softer. He used to carry Lena on his shoulders through spice markets, pointing at colors and smells with childlike wonder. He used to kiss his wife's forehead every night and whisper to her in Arabic poetry. But then cancer came. It took his wife swiftly, cruelly, like a thief in the dark. Karim buried her in silence. No speeches, no tears, just a marble tomb with her name carved in gold and a girl too fragile to understand where her mother had gone. After that, Karim threw himself into work. He bought more companies, more properties, more silence. And Lena faded. So when Amal began turning the tide, without degrees, without credentials, without speaking much at all, Karim was angry. Not at her, exactly. At himself. For missing it. For failing where a stranger had succeeded. It was during the second week that Karim saw something on the footage that made him drop his coffee cup. Lena had taken Amal's hand, not by accident, not as a reflex, but with purpose. They were sitting in the garden, beneath the only tree in the courtyard, where the sun filtered through thick branches like golden rain. Amal had brought out colored pencils and blank paper, offering Lena a world without words. The girl had drawn erratic shapes, odd spirals, nothing that made sense. But then she'd turned to Amal, as if seeking approval. Her tiny hand reached across the stone bench and wrapped around Amal's fingers, gently, willingly. Karim watched the scene over and over. He hadn't touched his daughter in months. He had tried in the beginning, hugs, bedtime stories. But every time she looked at him, her face turned blank. Her arms stiffened. She rejected him, and it pierced him deeper than any business failure ever could. So he'd stopped trying. Until now. That night, Karim didn't review footage from his usual leather armchair. He stood behind the hallway column and watched them in real time. Amal didn't notice him. Lena miraculously did. Their eyes met. For a heartbeat, Karim's soul nearly left his chest. And then she looked away. The next day, Karim cancelled a trip to Qatar. He asked the chef to prepare a meal suitable for 3 people. He paced the dining room, adjusting silverware that didn't need adjusting, trying to remember how a father was supposed to behave. When Amal arrived with Lena, Karim stood behind his chair like a guest at his own table. Amal noticed the tension immediately. Should I feed her first and come back? Karim shook his head. No, sit, both of you. Lena hesitated, but Amal gave her a look, a silent, gentle nod. Lena sat. The meal was quiet, filled with clinks and stolen glances. Karim tried asking questions. Did you enjoy the garden? Do you like drawing? But Lena stayed silent. Amal answered with calm warmth, never speaking over the girl, never forcing her to respond. Halfway through the meal, something unexpected happened. Lena reached across the table and touched her father's hand. It was soft, brief, like the flutter of a bird. Karim froze. So did Amal. The room felt holy for a moment. And then the girl giggled. A small sound, but unmistakable. Karim's eyes filled instantly. He excused himself from the table and disappeared into the hallway. Amal found him minutes later, standing in front of a framed photo of his late wife. "She's still in there," Amal said quietly, standing beside him. Kareem's voice cracked. "I thought I lost her." "You didn't. You just stopped trying." Kareem turned to her, not with anger, but with something closer to gratitude. Or maybe guilt. "Why are you really here, Amal?" She paused. "Because I know what it's like to feel invisible." And with that, she walked away, leaving Kareem alone with his thoughts and his regrets. That night, Kareem didn't watch the security footage. For the first time, he didn't need to. The next morning, Kareem stood outside a door he hadn't opened in almost a year. Lena's mother, Layla, had once turned this room into a sanctuary. It was meant to be a playroom full of sunlight, handmade toys from Marrakesh, and shelves of picture books in Arabic, English, and French. But after her passing, the room became a mausoleum. No one dared enter, not even the cleaning staff. Dust coated every surface, and the once bright pillows had faded to a dull beige. It had become a room of forgotten things, too painful to visit, too sacred to destroy. But that morning, something in Kareem shifted. Maybe it was the way Lena had touched him at dinner. Maybe it was Amal's words echoing through the hallways of his soul. Or maybe it was the simple truth. He was tired of being afraid of his daughter. He opened the door. The air smelled of old lavender and dust. A tiny wooden giraffe lay sideways on the window ledge, one of Lena's old favorites. Kareem stepped inside, slowly, brushing his fingers across the worn fabric of the tent Layla had sewn by hand. His throat tightened. That afternoon he called Amal. "I need your help," he said over the intercom. She appeared in the doorway a few minutes later, Lena by her side. When the child saw the room, she froze. Her tiny body trembled. But Amal didn't force her forward. Instead, she knelt and whispered something Kareem couldn't hear. Lena blinked up at her, then back to the door. Then, 1 foot at a time, she stepped inside. Kareem watched from behind, barely breathing. Lena walked straight to the little giraffe and sat beside it. And then she began to hum. It was the tune Layla used to sing at bedtime. Kareem had to turn away. The emotion rising in his chest was too much. Grief, longing, guilt, hope, all tangled together like wires behind a wall. For a moment, he considered walking away again, locking the door for another year. But Amal turned to him. "Come sit," she said. Kareem hesitated. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Neither does she," Amal replied gently. "But she's trying." So he stepped into the room, for real this time. No mask, no titles. Just Kareem, the father. He sat beside them, knees stiff, hands awkward on his lap. Lena looked at him again, her eyes wide and curious. She reached into a nearby box and pulled out a book. The Little Prince, in Arabic. She placed it in his lap. Karim stared at it. He remembered reading this very book to her as a toddler. Layla had insisted it would teach Lena empathy and imagination. Karim had rolled his eyes at the time, but now, holding the worn pages in his hands, he understood. He opened the book. His voice trembled as he began to read. Once upon a time, in a faraway desert. Lena scooted closer. By the third page, her tiny head leaned against his shoulder. By the fifth, she was tracing the drawings with her fingers. Karim felt her warmth, her trust, and something ancient awakened in him. A need not to protect, but to be present. After the reading, Lena fell asleep on a cushion, her head resting on Amal's lap. Karim stood, trying to compose himself. "She's changing," he whispered. "No," Amal said softly. "You are." Karim looked at her then, really looked at her. He had never met someone so gentle and yet so steady. Amal didn't flinch in his presence. She didn't play by power, and it humbled him. "I've treated you like a servant," he said, ashamed. "You hired me to care for your daughter," she answered. "But I saw that she wasn't the only one who needed it." For a moment, Karim thought about the life Amal must have lived before arriving here. The calmness in her voice had a cost. The way she moved, like someone used to carrying more weight than anyone noticed. But he didn't ask. Not yet. That night, the playroom door stayed open, and Karim, for the first time in a long time, didn't dine alone. The sun had barely risen when the sound of raised voices echoed through the marble corridors of the Al-Fahd estate. Karim was standing in the grand hallway, holding a silver tray with 3 cups of mint tea he had awkwardly tried to prepare himself, when his older brother, Hassan, stormed in through the front doors. His long navy thobe flared with each step, and his eyes were already burning with disapproval. "You canceled the investors' dinner. Again," Hassan snapped. Karim set the tray down, steadying himself. "Lena needed me." Hassan's face twisted. "Lena always needs someone. That's why we pay people, Karim. You don't just disappear from your own company." Karim glanced toward the upstairs landing, where Amal had just appeared with Lena, holding her hand. "I didn't disappear," he said quietly. "I came home." Hassan scoffed. "To play house with a stranger from the streets of Nairobi? What is this?" Amal's eyes didn't flinch. She looked directly at Hassan and calmly lowered her gaze to Lena, gently nudging her back toward her room. "Don't you walk away while I'm talking," Hassan called out to her. Karim stepped forward. "Don't raise your voice in my home." "She's not family," Hassan said. "She's the help. She doesn't belong in your world, Karim." "Neither did Layla," Karim replied, sharper now. "And yet She made me better. The silence between them cracked like glass. Karim had never spoken to Hassan this way before. Not when they built their real estate empire together. Not when Hassan undermined him in boardrooms. Not even when he disapproved of Karim marrying Layla, who had been a teacher with no pedigree. But something had shifted. Karim no longer needed approval. He needed peace. And peace, he had learned, was not passive. It was earned through courage. That night, he knocked on Amal's door. She opened it, wearing a soft linen blouse and loose trousers, her hair wrapped in a scarf. Her eyes were tired, but kind. "I owe you an apology," Karim said. Amal tilted her head slightly. "For what?" "For letting someone disrespect you under my roof." She stepped aside, allowing him in. He hesitated at the threshold. No man in his position ever entered a staff room. But this wasn't about status anymore. Inside, her room was simple. A prayer mat folded neatly in the corner. A small wooden cross beside the bed. And on the wall, drawings by Lena. Colorful, joyful, chaotic. "She's drawing you now," Amal said, noticing his gaze. "She gave you a crown in this one." Karim chuckled. "I don't deserve it." "No," she said softly. "But maybe she doesn't see who you were. Maybe she sees who you're becoming." He sat on the small bench by the window. "Do you believe people can change?" he asked. "I do. But only if they choose to." There was a long pause. Then Karim said, "When Layla died, I didn't cry. I went back to work the next day. Everyone praised me for being strong, but I wasn't. I was broken. I just didn't know how to show it." Amal nodded. "Grief doesn't disappear. It waits, and when it has no voice, it speaks through silence, anger, or neglect." Karim swallowed hard. "I neglected my daughter." "You can't change the past," she said. "But you're here now." He looked at her then, not as an employer, not even as a father desperate for help, but as a man finally humbled. "Why did you take this job, really?" Amal hesitated. Then she said, "I lost my son." The words dropped like stones. "He had Down syndrome. His name was Tay. He died 3 years ago." Karim's eyes widened. "I couldn't save him," she continued. "But maybe I was meant to help someone else's child, someone who still had a chance." Karim's throat tightened. He stood slowly and whispered, "Thank you." She gave him a gentle nod, her eyes shining with pain and strength. As he stepped into the hallway, Karim saw Lena standing in the dark, clutching a pillow. He knelt beside her. "Couldn't sleep." She nodded silently. He opened his arms. She walked straight into them. And for the first time in her short, turbulent life, She called him something she never had before. Baba. The morning after Lena first called him Baba, Karim woke with a feeling he hadn't known in years. Lightness. It was strange. He hadn't changed his routine. He still rose at 6 o'clock a.m., still read the international market reports with his Arabic coffee, still reviewed his company's reports. But everything felt different now. The walls didn't echo as coldly. The air in the estate carried the distant sound of laughter, Lena's, and somehow even the silence had softened. He found himself lingering near her room more often, watching her and Amal through the open door as they played, read books, or watered the garden together. His presence no longer made Lena stiffen or retreat. She looked at him now, curious, trusting. Even if she didn't speak, her eyes did. It was in this new rhythm of peace that Karim remembered the footage. The security cameras had always been active. Every corner of the mansion was under surveillance, not for control, at least that's what he told himself, but for protection. He had started monitoring the feed obsessively after his wife passed, needing to feel like he still had control over the one piece of her left behind. He hadn't reviewed the footage in days. For once, he didn't feel the need to watch his daughter through a screen. But curiosity tugged at him that morning. He opened the archived recordings out of habit, scrolling back to the night Lena had said, "Baba." He expected to see just the hallway, her small figure moving toward him in the dark. What he didn't expect was what came before that. He played it back. There, on the screen, was Amal, sitting on her bedroom floor with Lena just before bed. The child was in her pajamas, clutching the worn giraffe toy. Amal had her hands gently cupped around Lena's, her voice a soft hum. The camera had no audio, but her mouth moved slowly, as if forming prayers. Then she leaned forward, pressing her forehead to Lena's, and she wept. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. Just quiet tears, like someone opening a door they hadn't dared to in years. And then Lena touched her face, wiped a tear. Karim's breath caught. He fast-forwarded the video. Hours passed. Amal carried Lena to bed, kissed her forehead, and whispered something into her ear. She stayed until the girl fell asleep. Only then did Amal rise and collapse into silent sobs alone on the carpeted floor. It shook him. He had thought Amal was here to do a job, to serve, to clean, to heal someone else's child. But she had been healing herself too, and maybe so had he. That afternoon, he invited her to join him in the courtyard for tea. Amal appeared wearing a white linen dress, simple and elegant. She sat across from him with quiet poise, her hands folded gently in her lap. "I watched the footage," he said, not unkindly. Her eyes held steady. "I thought you might. You didn't just save my daughter, Amal. You brought her back to me." She shook her head. "I didn't bring her back. She was never gone. You just couldn't see her." Karim leaned forward. How do you do it? How do you carry all this and still smile? Amal looked out toward the garden, where Lena was watering a row of hibiscus flowers. When you've lost everything, she said, you learn to cherish every small thing that remains. A smile, a step forward, a second chance. Karim was quiet. Then, after a long pause, would you ever consider staying, not as staff, as part of the family? Amal's eyes widened. I mean it, he added quickly. Lena, she sees you as more than a caregiver, and he hesitated. I see you as someone I trust, someone who understands us in ways no one else ever has. Amal studied him, not as a boss, not as a billionaire, but as a man, one who had finally learned how to be human again. I didn't come here for a life, she said softly, but somehow it found me anyway. In the distance, Lena was drawing something in chalk on the stone path. Karim stood and walked toward her. Amal followed. As they approached, they saw it, a crude but joyful drawing of 3 stick figures, all holding hands. One was small, with a pink dress. One was tall, with a crown, and the last had curly hair and a heart above her head. Karim bent down beside his daughter. Is this us? Lena beamed. He looked at Amal, who was already wiping a tear from her cheek. And in that fragile moment, surrounded by chalk, sun, and silence, Karim knew. His family had just been reborn. Karim stood at the edge of the garden, heart pounding. That morning, he'd called his lawyer. Later that afternoon, Amal found an envelope on her pillow. Inside, a document offering her full guardianship rights if anything ever happened to Karim. Alongside it, a simple handwritten note. Family is not blood, it's choice. I choose you. Amal clutched it to her chest, overwhelmed. She walked to Karim and embraced him, without words. Lena saw, and for the first time, ran toward them, arms wide. 2 weeks later, for the first time in years, the Al-Fad mansion opened its gates. Friends, colleagues, even staff gathered. It wasn't a corporate event. It was a birthday party for Lena. Balloons floated above the courtyard. A small stage had been built, and when Karim stepped up and invited Amal to stand beside him, no one missed the symbolism. She saved my daughter, he said, and she reminded me how to love. The crowd applauded. But all Karim saw were 2 things: Lena smiling, and Amal holding his hand. Karim announced he was stepping down from day-to-day business. He wanted to be a father first. Amal stayed, not as staff, but as family. They traveled, laughed, built new traditions. Lena spoke more. She began school. She drew every day. And slowly, the pain in their hearts made space for joy. Karim, once a man of stone, became soft around the edges because of them. 1 year later, Karim visited his wife's grave with Amal and Lena. He knelt, placing a white rose. "She would have loved you," he whispered to Amal. Lena placed her giraffe toy beside the headstone, then said, clear and proud, "Mama." They all cried, and under the setting sun, they stood as one, father, daughter, and the woman who brought them back to life. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Share it with someone who believes in second chances. Because sometimes the family we choose saves us.